Good morning, everyone, or should I say, good morning, Dom. For the 5 of you who follow me on Twitter, yes, I'm still on Twitter. Imagine that. I do this every morning. I greet the Dom, and I've been doing this probably about like 6, 7 years, like literally every day. I want to thank, I'm here for React Summit US. I want to thank Nations for having me. Merci beaucoup. But yes, we are here in New Jersey, or what I used to call US East 1, NYC 1A, because that's how we work, right? But we're here in New Jersey, home of what used to be the New Jersey Nets. Any ball fans here? All right. New Jersey, birthplace of Whitney Houston. Hey. New Jersey, place of one of the best employers in the history of work. The Sopranos. I hear they're good to work for. New Jersey, birthplace of Greg. Okay, someone knows. And for those who don't know who Craig is, you might know Craigslist. Oh, there you go. And New Jersey, where they shot Friday the 13th. You know, but speaking of horror and tragedy, today we're actually going to talk about web performance. I mean, web performance, come on now. It's not that bad. But, you know, I know Halloween was a few weeks ago. I personally like Halloween. Halloween's a little fun. But, you know, essentially, we are going to have fun with today's talk. So, essentially, I'm sort of, you know, entitling this Monday the 13th. Because we are going to look at some pretty interesting and potentially sad data. So, with all that being said, welcome to my presentation, which I'm calling React. And specifically, it's a frightening look at performance figures. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's really going to be that bad, but we are going to look at some data, and that's not always favorable, but that's how the web is sometimes when we talk about performance. So let me introduce myself. My name is Henri. I could be found on all socials at Henri Helvetica. Yes, that is not my real name. It's a nom plume. I have a situation that I'm starting up called Command H. It's sort of going to be like developer media. And I'm also going to, you know, do web performance stuff. I'm from the greatest city on the planet called Toronto in Canada. Oh, we have Canadians here. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming to see me. I'm a bit of a distance runner. Yes, I did a Nike campaign a few years ago. I'd be happy to talk about that, the running, that is. But I started this campaign online called #DevsWhoRun for those who run. So by all means, if you do run, any runners here? Yeah. I wanted to go out this morning. I didn't have my gloves. It was 0 degrees Celsius, and I chose not to. That being said, let's go. So we're here to talk about React. Now, some of you probably remember React turned 10 years old this year, which is actually pretty cool. And if you look back and you think about what was happening 10 years ago, the iPhone 5S was the new thing. Anyone own a 5S here? No? Okay. And if you're of the other flavor, the Moto X was brand new. But that was 10 years ago. But something really important happened a few years after that, specifically 3 years after. In November in 2016, I try to remind people all the time, this was a significant date in history for the web, for developers too. That's because for the first time in the history of the web, the internet was being accessed more on mobile than it was on desktop. And that happened in fall of 2016. And I just want to I want you to keep in mind that this is never, ever, 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 ever going back. All right? Now, that also indicates that we're basically in modern times. And, you know, we once had the web kind of look like this. Speaking of Craigslist, speaking of South Jersey, all right? Real simple, not too many, you know, technologies on the hood here. But, you know, today's web kind of looks like this. for the NBA fans, there's a lot going on here. It may not look like it, but we're talking about just under like 50 technologies working under the hood. Live updates, like there's so much going on here. And in fact, this site alone has like 1,500 requests. Like this is what the modern web is capable of and looks like today. So when it comes to, when we talk about the modern web, we also want to talk about modern performance. Because if you're going to talk and work with the modern web on your devices, when you do some tracking of performance, we're talking about modern performance. And whenever performance comes to mind, we have to discuss the idea of metrics. Because again, metrics, not having APIs, it felt like, yeah, we kind of can click, okay, 8.5 seconds, we're good. But modern metrics or modern performance also require modern metrics. And we are here today. Now, modern metrics look something like this. This is just a few of them, but here we have a septet of metrics. Time to first byte, largest contentful paint, total blocking time, cumulative layout shift, speed index, which is one of my favorite, by the way, first input delay, and interaction to next paint. These are 7 metrics that we pay attention to today. Who has heard of the majority of these? I can't even see, by the way, so whatever. But I'm going to concentrate on a few, and specifically this quartet of metrics, LCP, CLS, FID, and interaction to next paint. So I used to work at this company called CashPoint, where we had this tool called web page tests. Who's heard of web page tests? Please say yes, no, yeah. Okay, just a few of you. All good, because now more of you can take my course next year. But we look at what the web looks like under the hood, all right? Like, the shiny car looks great, but maybe it's blowing blue smoke. We can pick that up. So what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to present to you, is a bit of a snapshot of the web. This is what we see as performance people when we look under the hood. And specifically, okay, I thought that was a heckler. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the tools that we use. Well, tools. I'm going to pull data from this place called the HP archive, all right, which is sort of like lab data of how the web is being built. I'm also going to pull from the CWV tech.report. So it's essentially a core of vitals report, and it's RUM data. And I'm going to pull some of that as well. And I'm also going to pull data from the RUM archive, which is a RUM version of the HP archive, courtesy of the good people at Akamai. And this is also super fascinating data. Now, since we're talking about modern web performance, and I want to speak in a language that people at least had heard of. Who's familiar with Core Vitals here? Hands up if you've heard of it. Okay, awesome, thank you. So we're going to talk about that today. And Core Web Vitals is made up of 3 metrics, right? And they each represent a particular stage of a site in the loading process. So we start with things like visual completeness, the user experience of visual completeness. When you're holding your handheld device, likely a smartphone, like, what does it look like when the page is loading? And when that happens, we talk about the LCP, the largest contentful paint. And that means like the hero image, or the hero, or the largest content, when it's good, it loads in 2,500 milliseconds, 2.5 seconds. When it's bad, it loads in 5,000 seconds or more. In between, it's kind of like meh. But we're going to talk about that. But we also got to talk about page stability. Who's here loaded a site and it's like you waited for the page to calm down before you started reading? All right? We talk about that all the time. And that comes down also to a bit of a user experience. And when it comes to the page stability, we talk about the CLS, which is the cumulative layout shift. And here it's not a timing index, it's more like just a metric. And 0.1 or below, awesome. 0.25 or higher, not that good. And in between, it's like, whatever, it needs work. The ultimate score here is 0, all right? And of course, we have to talk about interactivity. What happens when you click that buy button on your React Summit US ticket. You want that to work or not, all right? But we talk about the FID, first input delay. 100 milliseconds or lower, awesome. 300 or higher, not that good, and in between, needs work. All right, so now the data. Let's start to look at this. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna sort of compare what the web looks like and what we see React sites look like, all right? So what the web looks like right now, when we pull the web, 43.1% have good CLS, good LCP, and good FID. So sort of like 3 green checks. When it comes to React sites, 37.7% have good across the board. All right. That really means that just over 60% have like mediocre or poor core web vitals. And these are just data points I want you to keep in mind. Let's look at these vitals now individually. Let's start with the LCP. Now, the web has good LCP at a rate of about 59%, which is pretty good. So again, that means that the hero or the largest content on the page is loading in 2,500 milliseconds or faster at a 60 or 59% rate. React, 47.4. Okay, not a huge deal, but you know, again, just a reminder of what's going on. The web, when it comes to CLS, when it comes to page stability, is doing well at a rate of about 75%. React, 70%. All right, not that bad. You know, either way, it's all pretty good. Again, these are points I want you to remember. Now, the FID, the first input delay, the interactivity metric, the web is passing at a rate of 96%, which is amazing. React is passing at a rate of just about the same, 96.5, which is also amazing. But for those of you who track performance, this is a metric that we've had some challenges with. And as we looked at the data, any teachers, former teachers here, or anything like that? Yeah. You know when you write that exam and everyone in class gets like A+, and you're like, either this was the wrong exam or everyone was cheating. Well, it was figured out that this was the wrong metric. And this was something that was sort of like mulled over, and they figured out that, you know, they weren't tracking this interactivity metric properly. So it is essentially going to be scratched officially by next year. But what they did do is replace it with this one metric called interaction to next paint. I forgot the 2-part. It was experimental until this year, where it was basically staged to go full on March of next year, all right? So when you start to look at INP for short, you start to look at the data, it looks like this. The web is passing at a rate of 78%. And again, this is an interactivity metric. This is how, you know, we get things bought online, JavaScript. But React is not doing the best. So again, when it comes to the INP, React at a rate of 50% is mediocre or poor. So just to bring you up to speed of what the INP is going to signify in terms of metrics moving forward, at 200 milliseconds or faster, green light, 500 or worse, not good, and in between it's meh, pardon me. But again, these are important parts because we're talking about the interactivity that's necessary for really the web to operate these days, okay? Now, let's look at some more data, super fun. Now, we are talking about JavaScript, aren't we? And just a reminder that a kilobyte of JS is not equal to a kilobyte of, say, image data. JavaScript has this level of toxicity that we just need to keep in mind. You know, again, we're not hating on JS, at least I'm not. Someone else in my deck will. But this is important to know. So let's look at some data here from the HTTP archive. So at the 50th percentile, the web is shipping about 560 kilobytes of JS. Cool. Now, if we compare that to what React sites are doing, everyone's happy, apparently. Almost 1,200 kilobytes, all right? And this has been going, increasing year over year. 12% year over year increase from last year. Now, if we look at the top 100,000 React sites, they're shipping 436 kilobytes at the 50th percentile, which is basically double what the web is doing in the top 100,000 sites. Now, another metric that I struggled to bring up, but I didn't want to because it almost deserves its own talk, is total blocking time. For those who say, follow, I don't know, Lighthouse scores, this is worth a lot of your score, all right? The problem is that JavaScript, the abundance of it tends to influence total blocking time, increase it, and probably start to hammer your user experience. I'm going to get to that in a hot minute, but I want to bring it up here. Now let's look at some more data. This is super fun. So just a reminder that, again, what I talked about earlier, we have more mobile users than desktop users just generally. And desktop metrics tend to do better than mobile metrics. Kind of makes sense. We don't have M3 laptops in mobile phones yet. But generally, you just want to keep that in mind. So, for example, this is Akamai RUM data. The internet traffic looks like this. Again, more mobile devices online than desktop at a rate of 80% more. Okay, 61.4 versus almost 34. Now, this is a really interesting screenshot, and I want to share it. Now, you're going to see that part where I kind of stop on July 1st, and you see mobile at a rate of almost 70%. This is the kind of data point that happens quite often. Why? We have holiday weekends. Why? We have weekends in general. Mobile use jumps on weekends versus the rest of the week. So even more data proving to you that we are in a mobile device society. 67% of sites have more mobile traffic than desktop. Again, natural. And I just want to remind people there are two mobile users that we know. Okay, iPhone users and clowns. There are apparently a few clowns in here. But real talk, though, serious talk. This is important, and here's why. A few nerds may have picked this up, seen the talks, but Facebook engineering had done some fabulous work. And there was this library they had called Device Year Class. Anyone familiar with that? Yeah? No? It's totally cool because I'm here to tell you about it. Android devices made this play for volume, meaning you were able to buy inexpensive Android devices. What happened was that they gave you shiny new phones with antiquated or old guts, old CPUs, old GPUs. But they worked. That's all that mattered. But what they discovered is the fact that this kind of information was super important in terms of what you were sending down the wire. And generally, Android devices are just not as powerful So, and we ended up with a new phone with basically older parts. Now, why does this matter? Well, again, the reminder, we're mostly on mobile. The reminder that the total blocking time that I talked about, that event is 2.5 to 3 times more, 3 times worse on a mobile device. Okay? So that interactivity that you're trying to achieve, people are having a harder time on mobile phones. There's this thing called rage clicking. If it sounds funny, but this is actually being tracked by run providers out there, Dynatrace, actually the good people at Sentry outside, they actually have their own metric they're calling user misery or something like that. But this is actually being tracked. You know, it's like how many times you're hitting this button because it's not working. What happens is that, you know, the JavaScript is hammering the main thread, hammering your key metrics, and hammering your user experience. More JavaScript, worse TBT, total blocking time, and worse becomes your INP. Harry Roberts has the quote of all quotes, performance engineer out of the UK. JavaScript is the fastest way to build yourself a slow website, which I thought was kind of interesting. So what do? We always talk about measuring. You absolutely have to measure. You want to see what is going on. The app looks great, the site looks amazing, but what's happening under the hood? You cannot improve what you don't measure. Shout outs to the runners out there who are trying to get PBs. Thank you. So you use tools like web page test, where I used to work. But you also have tools like Lighthouse, Debug Bear, Trio. Another quote I like here, be conservative what you send. All right? Don't send JavaScript that's not going to be consumed. There's a lot of that happening. And I could have given like another talk about that. Send resources to machines that conform completely to the specifications. Kind of like an interpretation of the robustness principle. Again, you know, be aware of your users, what devices they're on. We have the technology to figure that out. Page performance is now parts proof, perception, and all user experience. That is a fantastic quote. Because it's mine. You remember that NBA landing page? It's a React site, by the way. Failed at the largest contentful paint metric. Cumulative layout shape, pretty good. Shift, pretty good. Probably low ads. FID, pretty good, but we know that everyone passes that, so strike it. INP, mediocre. And total blocking time was not the greatest. That being said, in closing out, I just want to say, like, you know, we have actually 3 or 4 performance discussions or talks happening at this conference. 3 of them are taking place with these gentlemen right here, Ivan, Ken, Medhat, who's actually going to be streaming. That being said, you can find me at Henri Helvetica on all socials, Instagram, what's the other one? Not Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon, this Blue Sky, whatever comes up tomorrow. And thank you.